Countering the opposition's attack on rising unemployment, Prime Minister Modi, who inaugurated projects worth over rupees 29,000 crore in Mumbai on Saturday, said that every infrastructure project leads to job creation and the increased pace of infrastructure development has led to increased employment generation. This was Modi's first visit to the city since his re-election last month. Among other projects, he laid the foundation stone for the 2 underground twin tunnel project. With the construction of every bridge, road or manufacturing of railway coaches, someone gets a job. With the increasing pace of infrastructure development, employment generation is also increasing, and with higher investment, these opportunities will increase further, he said, saying that Maharashtra has propagated cultural, social and national consciousness in the country. Modi added, we have to remember that goodwill and harmony are intrinsic to the path to the prosperity. Accusing the opposition of creating a false narrative, he cited a recent report released by the Reserve Bank of India which said almost 8 crore jobs had been created in the last 3 or 4 years. With these projects, which are worth rupees 30 crore, employment opportunities will also be created in Maharashtra. Only 2-3 months back, the central government gave clearance for Vidhan Port, Vadhavan Port. This project, which close to over rupees 76,000 crore, will create employment opportunities for over 10 lakh people, he said. Seeking to bring in a more comprehensive process to assess the performance of its personnel, the army is learned to the considering the 360-degree appraisal method, which would include inputs from peers and subordinates too. This is likely to be on the lines of the appraisal method learned to be employed by the central government to assess the performance of civil servants, including officers from the All India services and other Group A services, for impanelment to the post of Joint Secretary and above. Senior officials said the issue was discussed at the Army Commanders Conference in May. The Army is learned to have sought comments from all its commands on the need for such an appraisal system. The Army at present follows a 3-tier hierarchical model for performance appraisal of its personnel. The initiating officers, who is the immediate superior of the person being assessed, writes the annual confidential report. In the first big electoral battle after the Lok Sabha poll result last month, the India Bloc parties, which contested separately in West Bengal and Punjab, gained 5 seats to win 10 of the 13 assembly seats across 7 states where bypoll were held. The BJP, on the other hand, retained just 2 of the 3 seats in West Bengal, while Ally JDU lost its seat in Bihar to an independent. In the bypoll result on Saturday, only one of the 3 outgoing independent MLAs who contested as BJP candidates this time retained his seat in the Himachal Pradesh. The Trinamool Congress in West Bengal saw the major change. The ruling AAP clinched the high-stakes Jalandhar West Assembly bypoll, retaining the seat with a huge margin. It has come as a shot in the arm to Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann in the wake of the party's poor performance in the recent Lok Sabha polls. The bypoll results saw AAP candidate Mohinder Bhagat trouncing the BJP Sheetal Angural. Bhagat got 55,000 votes as against Angural's 17,000 votes, and the Congress candidate Surender Kaur 16,000 votes. The AAP had also won the Jalandhar West seat in the 22 assembly elections when Sheetal Angural had contested it on the party's ticket. Angural defected to the BJP ahead of Lok Sabha polls, which necessitated by-election. He contested this time on the BJP's ticket. This win has come as a breather for the AAP, which has been reeling from various problems in the state. It is especially significant given the AAP setback in the Lok Sabha polls, where it could win only 3 of the 13 seats as against Congress 7 seats. This was in sharp contrast to party's sweep in 22 state polls, where it bagged 92 of the 117 seats. In the recent Lok Sabha elections, the AAP performance in the Jalandhar West Assembly segment of the Jalandhar parliamentary seat was blue par. With party trailing behind the Congress and the BJP, the Lok Sabha seat was won by the Congress ex-CM Charanjit Singh Channi, who defeated the AAP turncoat and BJP candidate Sushil Kumar Rinku. The Ministry of Home Affairs Friday notified changes that enhance the power of the Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor on government departments and over the appointments and transfer of senior civil and police officers, triggering sharp reactions from political parties. The changes have come just before expected elections to the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly after a gap of 6 years. The transaction of business of Government of UT of Jammu and Kashmir Rules 24 deals with the powers of the LG related to police, public order, all India services and transfers and postings. As per the notification by the Union Home Ministry, the transfer or posting of any officer from the all India services, which means the entire top rung of the administration including all the administrative secretaries, head of departments and deputy commissioners, had to be approved by the LG, currently Manoj Sinha. The government must also seek approval of the LG to appoint the Advocate General and other law officers to assist the Advocate General in the court proceedings. Besides, the LG will have the last word on any proposal for grant of prosecution sanction. The amendments say all such proposals should be forwarded to the LG, though through the Chief Secretary for the final call. The amendments also state no proposal will require previous concurrence of the Finance Department with regard to the Police, Public Order, All India Service and Anti-Corruption Bureau to exercise the discretion of the Lieutenant Governor under the Act shall be concurred or rejected unless it has been placed before the Lieutenant Governor through the Chief Secretary. As per a political leader, earlier the Governor used to be the advisor of the Chief Minister. Now the CM and the Cabinet will be advisors to the Governor. Former Chief Minister and National Centre leader Umar Abdullah said a firm commitment laying out the timeline for restoration of full undiluted statehood of J&K is a prerequisite for assembly elections. The people of J&K deserve better than powerless rubber stamped CM who will have to beg the LG to get his or her PN appointed, Umar posted on X. Having won 5 of the 10 seats in Haryana in recent Lok Sabha elections, the Congress is riding high ahead of the assembly polls in the state. 5-term Congress MP from Rohtak Dipender Singh Hooda speaks to Manoj. Congress opened its account in Haryana in Lok Sabha polls this time after 0 seats in 19 and 1 in 14. How do you see it in terms of assembly polls? The people of Haryana have spoken decisively in the Lok Sabha elections. They have voted for change. There is a high level of anti-incumbency against the state government, which has failed to deliver. The BJP has derailed the Haryana story from being a number 1 state in terms of per capita income, per capita investment growth rate and other social indices to the number 1 state in unemployment, drug addiction, drug abuse related deaths and crime. We won 5 seats, but we also got 47% of the vote share, which is the highest India bloc garnered in any state and nearly 20% upswing from the 19 elections. But the BJP has the lead in 44 of the 90 assembly segments against the Congress 42 and India's 46. If you look at the last 10 years, the BJP has done well in national elections but not that well in state polls. In Haryana, the BJP was ahead in 80 assembly segments in 19. The Congress was ahead in only 10. But when the assembly polls took place some months later, the Congress went up to 31 and the BJP tumbled down to 40. They could not form government on their own. A BJP leader then said it could not repeat the same results in the assembly polls because Modi was a Brahmastra, but only in the Lok Sabha polls. This time their Brahmastra has also failed. So we are confident for a clean sweep. What should Congress do differently this time given its last two assembly polls? One of the factors behind our confidence is anti-incumbency. The other is that we have put our house in order. The people were fed up with the BJP in 19 itself, but we lost due to certain organizational lapses on our part. The strength of any good organization is to learn and make amends. The Congress has taken good and timely organizational decisions. Our house is in order this time. Kumari Shalja has announced a statewide Padyatra. There is a belief that PCC campaign which will only have the Hudas, so some leaders are planning their own campaigns. Every leader is now in Haryana for the election. They will all join the campaign along with the candidates. The BJP and the media are fishing for something negative, but Haryana Congress is united. There is no factionalism. Union Culture and Tourism Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat goes tandem skydiving in Haryana's Narnaul Saturday. On the occasion of World Skydiving Day, the minister flagged off an aircraft that will be used for skydiving, said to be the first such plane in the country. Union Home Minister Amit Shah Saturday said that there is a need to provide employment opportunities to the residents of border villages in order to prevent migration. He said that Central Armed Police Forces and Army deployed in such areas should encourage purchase of local agricultural and handicraft products. Reviving the implications of the Vibrant Villages program, Shah directed all concerned to continue the efforts made by senior ministers and officials in this regard. During the meeting, he said the government is committed to all-round development of the border villages. He said the healthcare facilities to the Army and Central Armed Police Forces should be regularly made available to benefit the residents of nearby villages. The Home Minister stressed upon maximum use of solar energy and other renewable sources of energy like windmills, etc. So far, more than 6,000 events have been organized in these border villages, which include about 4,000 service delivery and awareness camps. More than 600 projects have been sanctioned by the Center for Employment Generation in these villages. After a debate that the opposition boycotted in both houses of parliament, the bills to replace the Indian Penal Code 1860, the Criminal Procedure Code 1973 and the Indian Evidence Act 1872 were passed. The new bills carried names in Hindi even in the English versions of the bill. The President gave her assent to the bills when the government notified that the new laws will come into force on July 1, 2024. There is stiff opposition to the new laws from many quarters. The government has dismissed the grounds of opposition as irrelevant and motivated. The government's ram-through approach has not deterred the opposition to the laws. On the contrary, two state governments have declared that they will bring certain amendments in the state legislatures concerned. Tamil Nadu has appointed a one-person committee to suggest the changes within a month. Karnataka and other state governments may adopt the same route. It is therefore necessary to place the facts and the issues before the public and ask the citizens to arrive at their own conclusions. Criminal law is a subject in the concurrent list of the Constitution. Both Parliament and state legislature are competent to make laws on the subject. Undoubtedly, if the law made by Parliament and law made by a state legislature are repugnant, Article 254 of the Constitution will be attracted. However, that is an issue that will arise after the state legislature made a law. And the President did not give her assent to the law passed by the state legislature. Meanwhile, the question raised by those opposing the new laws must be heard and answered. Unfortunately, the central government has refused to answer in parliament or outside. Here are the questions. Is it correct that the bulk of the provisions of the three new laws have been copied and pasted from the three laws that were replaced? Is it correct that 90 to 95% of the IPC and the CRPC and these leave it. The edition of Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence might held might well hold the distinction of having spurred reforms around obscenity laws around the globe. In India, it was a subject of the Supreme Court's first judgment or whether obscenity came within the contours of the decency or morality restriction of the fundamental freedom of speech. My concern here is not the Supreme Court's 1964 judgment in Ranjit D. Odeshi versus State of Maharashtra or the finer points in the 1969 amendments of Section 292 of the now repealed IPC. Rather, it is the story of the prosecution of Lady Chatterley's lover in India that features bogus purchasers to trap booksellers, literature review style judicial orders, and decisive interventions by PM Jawaharlal Nehru himself. With the note dated October 24, 1959, R. N. Mishra forwarded 2 copies of the unexpurgated editions available at several bookshops in Connaught Circus to a colleague to the Directorate of Inspection Customs. The colleague replied that their department should urgently consult the Ministry of Home Affairs, a part of conventions on placing import bans on book or pamphlets. There was a ban in place already since 1943, but the Custom Department still referred the matter to the Home Ministry, not because of monumental changes in Indian law during the interregnum, but because courts in the US had ruled in favor of the Chatterley since. The Constitution found no mention in the dismissive notes by the MHA Under Secretary either, who with extreme reluctance passed the file on to the Law Ministry on November 17, 1959. It landed on the desk of Deputy Law Advisor D.B. Kulkarni, who issued a 6-page memo on the March 18, 1960 concluding that the book was obscene, a view in consonance with our heritage, tradition and the prevailing standards of our community. The note was approved by the Law Secretary and the file is Deputy Minister R.H. Hazarinavis, who in a memo dated April 7 struck a dissenting note. He referred to Khajuraho, UK Law and Penguin Books Victory in its trial for publishing Chatterley in November 1959, but not the Constitution. Since the Law Minister was away, he sent the papers to PM Jawaharlal Nehru. Last year, an 80-year-old enthusiastically participated in the Tata Mumbai Marathon. Clad in a sari and sneakers, octogenarian Bharati Jitendra Pathak ran with a Tiranga covering 4.2 km in 51 minutes. Pathak may be an aberration among Indian women, but Instagram is full of admirable grannies posting their videos lifting kettlebells and doing push-ups. The somewhat aggravating term aging gracefully has evolved from meaning slinking quietly into oblivion to making the most of life by living well. It is not about trying to look 25, but like that proverb by bottle of fine wine to get better at everything as you age. How old is too old to do something? Who decides? It is pertinent question because the world's focus is on the upcoming US elections where both candidates seem ravaged by time. If the aim is for the top job on earth, sure, the standards are different. Optics matter. A frail 80-something in a youth-obsessed society is not particularly inspiring. However, seen another way, everyone alive is growing older and every stage has important lessons to impart. When you are a child, each year has passes feel exciting because of the looming prospect of adulthood, which for dreamy young minds translates to romantic visions of independence and freedom. Alas, it is another matter altogether that reaching middle age evokes several nostalgia for childhood, which one realizes in retrospect is the only time one is actually free. Having said that, from the point of view of the slightly less agonizing 40s, youth is overrated. Parents rule, you have no agency. For many, the teen years are ridden with panicky insecurities, perhaps a necessary rite of passage of figuring out one's path ahead. The 20s are generally about work hard, play hard and fly by in a world of activity. By one's late 30s, some measure of inner confidence sets in. Whatever the journey one philosophically accepts, life goes on. It did not look good for the Prime Minister or for India. There he was smiling and hugging Vladimir Putin on the day that the Russian dictator bombed a children's hospital in Kyiv. Then came 4 more moments of Bohemia and friendship as they traveled together in a golf cart and spent the evening in the dictator's dacha. The next day, Modi himself seemed to realize that a mistake had been made and spoke eloquently of how it broke its heart when the children were killed in times of war. Then the spin doctors got into the act and leaked stories of the Indian media about how our Prime Minister had once more told Putin that the way forward was through diplomacy and dialogue and not in the battlefield, but the damage had been done. I spent some time last week trying to get an American view on Modi's visit and failed. I need not have bothered. The American ambassador in Delhi said it all. He warned that there is no such thing as strategic autonomy in times of conflict and warned that friendship between our two countries was better than ever before but should not be taken for granted. The more we insist on a kind of cynical calculation in place of a trusted relationship, the less we will get. An Israeli airstrike killed at least 71 Palestinians in a designated humanitarian zone in Gaza on Saturday, the enclave's health ministry said, in an attack that Israel has said targeted Hamas military chief Mohammed Deif. I was unclear whether Deif was killed. We are still checking and verifying the results of the strike, an Israeli military official told. Hamas said in a statement that Israeli claims it had targeted leaders of the group were false and aimed at justifying the attack, which was the deadliest Israeli attack in Gaza in weeks. A Pakistani court on Saturday acquitted jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Bibi in the un-Islamic marriage case, the only case keeping the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party founder behind bars since August last year. However, barely an hour after his acquittal in the case, an anti-terrorism court in Lahore approved the request to arrest the PTI leader in 3 cases linked to the unprecedented May 9 riots following his arrest in an alleged corruption case. The PTI called his latest arrest a gimmick to keep the illegal imprisonment prolonged. China expressed strongest opposition on Saturday to a US law signed by President Joe Biden that presses Beijing to resolve a dispute over Tibet's demand for greater autonomy, vowing to firmly defend its interest. Biden signed into law on Friday the Tibet Dispute Act, which seeks to push Beijing to hold talks with Tibetan leaders stalled since 2010 to secure a negotiated agreement on the Himalayan region and spur China to address the Tibetan people's aspirations on their historical, cultural, religious and linguistic identity. The law grossly interferes in China's domestic affairs, undermines China's interest and sends a severely wrong signal to the Tibet Independence Forces, China's foreign ministry said. Although Washington recognizes Tibet as a part of China, the law appears to question that position. Analysts say the US has long supported the rights of the Tibetan people to practice their religion and culture, accusing China of human rights violations in the remote regions bordering India. The US must also implement the act, the China's ministry said. If the US continues down the wrong path, China will take resolute measures to firmly defend its sovereignty, security and developmental interests. Attention has focused on Tibet-China issues as the Dalai Lama turned 89 last week. In a strategic move to curb its ongoing oil import bill and reduce dependence on the expensive US dollar, New Delhi aims to bolster bilateral trade with Moscow to $100 billion by 2030. However, the dynamics of India-Russia trade have been skewed. Since the onset of the Ukraine war in 2022, Russia has rapidly ascended to become India's top oil supplier, but Indian exports to Russia have struggled, resulting in a $57 billion trade deficit in the bilateral trade worth $66 billion in fiscal year 24. While India has managed to save over $10 billion by importing cheaper Russian oil in the last 2 years and has benefited from exporting petroleum products by processing Ural crude, meager imports to Russia mean that a historic geopolitical opportunity to cut dependence on the expensive US dollar has remained elusive. Explains why continued imbalanced trade with Russia could force India to use the Chinese yuan, which runs counter to its efforts towards internationalizing the rupee. Two Saturdays apart, the mood could not have been more different in Harare after being bowled out at 102 while chasing 116 in the first T20. India overpowered Zimbabwe in the fourth match, winning by 10 wickets to clinch the series by 3-1. Sure, it was on a fresh pitch, one where the ball came along quite nicely with the new ball especially, but it still underscored how India have managed to turn things around after that rusty start. And leading that charge was Yashasvi Jaiswal. Who do you tell an opener who just smashed a 47 ball 100 with 10 sixes that you have to bat at